Hello, I'm Archie Luxury and welcome to the program, fuckers. And today I'd like to talk about the high cost of prestige. And I was talking to my good friends from Brisbane Vintage Watches. I was talking to Luke. And I was talking to him about a deal that's turned bad. And basically, they had a Lange datograph, which is a platinum chronograph Lange, and they sold it. And they sold it on the condition that they organised a service through Lange. And okay, fair enough. You say, okay, fair enough. The watch is working perfectly. Nothing's broken. It's working well. What's a service going to cost? $1,000? What do we think a service is going to cost? And how about $4,000? $4,000. And oh my God, that's the problem with these extreme luxury watches. They are so damn expensive to service, and it's an interesting thing. What do you do? It's expensive. Having high-end luxury wristwatches is a very expensive thing to have, and it's the frustrating things. You know, the problem is when you take a wristwatch to Lange for a service, they do little things like they might replace the hands. Now the hands themselves, they're not super expensive, but they won't supply you the hands. If you go to an independent service person, they won't sell you, or they won't sell the independent watchmaker the hands. They got like a closed shop on the fucker. And it's a very trying thing. I know, with Breitling actually replaces the hands at every service. So, I've owned a few Breitlings and I've had them serviced, but the watchmaker, of course, could never replace the hands because they're not plentiful. They're not something you can just buy. And it's a pretty nasty world out there, the high cost of luxury. And talking to a couple people in the industry, what's actually happening is Rolex is clamping down, and what they're doing is they're insisting that watches go back to them for a service. And that's because it's a fucking gravy train. And there's some interesting legal battles going on. Unfortunately, the Watchmakers Guild, they're kind of ineffective. They're not very powerful. They're fucking useless if you want to know the truth. And you take on someone like Rolex with unlimited resources. Man, that's a scary proposition. And see, in the old times, Rolex used to give watchmakers case opening tools. They always supplied parts because they felt that's how they could create a market for their watches. They got the watchmakers to basically, they'd have all the tools and they could work on them. But in recent times, they've been clamping down on this, and it's a difficult thing. And I've been asked by a few people, what is the cost of servicing luxury wristwatches? And there's some scary numbers. There are really some scary numbers out there. I remember a couple years ago, I looked at a Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso rose gold minute repeater. And it was under the $30,000 mark. A minute repeater That's the one that chimes. You pull the lever at the side and it chimes what the time is. And I said, what the fuck is that thing going to cost to service? And because what do? It's not only a wristwatch, it's also a musical instrument. So, you've got a very skilled watchmaker who can service a fucking minute repeater. So you send that off for repair, you're not going to see much change out of $4,000 or $5,000 fucking dollars. And it's scary. You buy a perpetual calendar. What do you think a perpetual calendar is going to cost? I've got a really good watchmaker in Sydney, Paul Heath. He's probably one of the best watchmakers around. And he said to me he doesn't want to work. He'll work on annual calendars, but he won't work on a perpetual calendar just because of the complexity. And that's a pretty scary proposition. So you send these things back to Patek or whatever brand you're talking about, and the service bill is pretty fucking scary. It's pretty fucking scary indeed. And my Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, the 14790, it's a piece which it's got using an ultra slim movement, very slim movement, and the problem is the mainspring, the tolerances are so fine that if it's not right, it doesn't function properly. So what do? You can't just go to Audemars Piguet. You can't just get your watchmaker to request a mainspring. They won't sell it to you. They won't supply the parts. So you've got to take it back to AP service agent, and they'll do a full fucking service on it. And, many brands have done this, like Cartier. I had that Cartier Panther, the steel Cartier Panther. It had a dial blemish. I bought it cheap because it had a slight dial blemish, and I thought, look, I'll just get the fucking dial replaced. But Cartier would not just replace the dial. They want to do a full service. Even though I already serviced the and it's a fucking gravy train. It's a gravy train that all these watchmakers jump on the bandwagon. And I got to tell you, with a lot of these special sort of watches, if they're using an ETA movement, it's not so hard for them to get fixed. But if they're using an in-house movement, they're fucking expensive. You're tied to the manufacturer to do the repair. And that can be fucking expensive stuff. An annual calendar from Patek, you're not going to see much change out of $2,000, are you? A simple 3-hand Calatrava with a date, you're going to be looking about $1,000 to $1,500. And this is the high cost of luxury. It's the high cost of having very, very prestigious watches. And I don't know what to say. I've got my 5 there, the Archie 5. I've got 2 Pateks, an Audemars Piguet, a Jaeger-LeCoultre, and a Breguet. And all of those would be fucking expensive to get serviced by the agent. And what have I done? The Patek was sold to me with it had already had a recent service in recent times. So that's the annual calendar, so I can leave that for a while. The Calatrava, well, I just did a service on the Calatrava. I took it to an independent, and that was about $250. That was Paul Heath in Sydney, highly well-regarded watchmaker. The Audemars Piguet, Paul Heath has looked at it, but he can't get the parts from AP. So I'm going to have to get that serviced by AP. The Jaeger-LeCoultre, it's going to need a service next year. And the Breguet, I've done a service on the Breguet. So I mean these costs here, these are pretty dear things. And this is the high cost of luxury. And sometimes, you know, if you've got a massive watch collection, they're a fucking liability. So sometimes it's better limit the number of pieces you need. I mean, I kind of think, you know, if you're a watch lover, how many do you need? Well, you need one dress watch, one everyday watch, and maybe something special for oddball occasions. But there's a certain argument for having less pieces. I mean, if you're going into pieces like that, the Trinity members, they aren't cheap to run. I'm Archie Luxury. Tell me what you think of the high cost of maintaining a luxury watch.